On October 4th, 1994, Eudora, Kansas, 16-year-old Sarah's drive home from work took a horrifying turn. Her car broke down near the Cornfields, and something in the stalks seemed to be watching her. What happened next came to haunt her for the rest of her life. I've always thought Kansas was the quietest place on earth. That's why I liked it. The small town of Eudora was my whole world growing up, barely a dot on the map. Most people who live here never leave, but you hear about folks leaving all the time. Not me. I never wanted much more than what I already had. A simple life, a part-time job, and friends I'd known since kindergarten. But all that changed one night in October 1994, and no matter how hard I've tried, I can't forget what happened. It was a Friday night, just a normal shift at the local grocery store where I worked after school. Nothing unusual. I bagged groceries, stocked the shelves, and helped out where I could. By 9:30, I was done for the night and ready to meet up with my friends at the Dairy Queen, like we did most Friday nights. My dad always said I needed to make more plans for my life, think about the future, but at 16 I wasn't thinking about college or a career. I just wanted to hang out with my friends, eat greasy food, and talk about stuff that didn't matter. The sun had already set by the time I clocked out. The store wasn't far from home, maybe a 15-minute drive, tops. But that night, I wanted to take the longer route around the cornfields. It was a quiet drive, and sometimes I liked having that time to myself. Just me and the old '83 Ford Escort my uncle had given me. That car was a piece of junk, but it got me where I needed to go. Most of the time, anyway. I remember how the air felt that night, cooler than it had been all week. A crispness that let you know summer was truly over. The harvest was just around the corner, and the fields were full of tall, dry corn waiting to be cut down. Eudora was surrounded by miles of farmland, and when you were out on the back roads, it felt like the whole world was nothing but rows of corn stretching out forever. I didn't expect anything to go wrong. I was just driving, thinking about what I'd order at Dairy Queen, maybe a burger and fries. I had the radio on, tuned to some classic rock station, and everything seemed normal. That is, until the car started acting up. At first it was just a little sputter, the kind of thing that happens when the engine's cold. I didn't think much of it, but then the engine started coughing and the dashboard lights flickered. I let out a sigh and muttered a curse under my breath. The car had been doing this for a few weeks now, but my dad and I hadn't gotten around to fixing it. We were always short on money, and there was always something more important that needed to be done. I pulled over to the side of the road, gravel crunching under the tires. I tried turning the key a couple of times, but the engine didn't even pretend like it wanted to start. The car was dead. Just my luck, I thought. I got out, slammed the door behind me, and kicked the front tire. Not that it would help, but it made me feel a little better. I grabbed my backpack from the passenger seat, threw it over my shoulder, and started walking. I wasn't that far from home, maybe an hour on foot if I kept a good pace, and I figured I'd just walk it. The road was deserted, as it usually was at that time of night, and I knew it wasn't worth waiting for someone to drive by. Folks didn't travel those roads after dark unless they had a good reason. The night was unusually quiet. Normally you'd hear crickets or the occasional owl, but that night it felt like the world had gone silent. I remember looking up at the sky, noticing how the stars were brighter than usual, like a thick blanket of them had been tossed across the blackness. The moon was just a sliver, casting a faint glow over the fields. The only sound was the wind rustling through the corn. I walked for about 20 minutes before I got the first hint that something was off. It started as just a feeling. You know that sensation when you think someone's watching you, but you turn around and no one's there? That's how it felt. I shrugged it off at first, told myself I was just being paranoid. But as I kept walking, the feeling got stronger, like there were eyes on me, watching me from somewhere out there in the dark. I turned around and looked behind me. Nothing. The road stretched out, empty, disappearing into the night. The cornfields on either side of me were still, except for the occasional flicker of movement as the wind brushed through the stalks. I shook my head and kept walking, telling myself I was just being stupid. Then I heard it. A rustling sound like something was moving through the corn, keeping pace with me. I stopped dead in my tracks and listened. The sound stopped too. I stood there for a few seconds, straining to hear anything else, but it was just silence. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I told myself it was probably just an animal, a raccoon or a deer. Nothing to worry about. I started walking again, a little faster this time, trying to shake the feeling of unease creeping up my spine. But the rustling sound came back, louder this time, closer. It wasn't just the wind. Something was moving through the corn, following me. I turned and looked again, scanning the edge of the field for any sign of movement. My eyes were adjusting to the darkness, and at first I didn't see anything. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure, standing just inside the corn, barely visible in the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. It was tall, taller than anyone I'd ever seen, with long, thin limbs that didn't look right. Its skin was pale, almost grey, and its face, well, I couldn't see its face clearly, but I knew it wasn't human. Its eyes were too big, too dark, and they were locked on me. I froze. Every instinct in my body told me to run, but I couldn't move. It just stood there, watching me, not making a sound. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my legs trembling, but I was rooted to the spot, unable to tear my eyes away from it. And then, it stepped forward, out of the corn, its movements slow and deliberate. I took a step back, and as soon as I did, it lunged. I didn't think, I just ran. I don't know how I managed to get my legs moving, but somehow I did. I took off down the road, my boots slapping against the gravel, my backpack bouncing against my shoulders. The cornfield beside me erupted with noise as the thing crashed through the stalks, chasing after me. I could hear it, the sound of its long, heavy limbs snapping through the dry corn, getting closer with every step. I didn't dare look back. I knew if I slowed down, if I hesitated for even a second, it would catch me. My lungs were burning. My legs felt like they were on fire, but I kept running, pushing myself harder than I ever had before. The streetlights of the town were still so far away, just a faint glow on the horizon. I didn't know if I could make it, but I had no choice. It was either keep running or... I didn't want to think about what would happen if I stopped. The thing was getting closer. I could hear it right behind me now, its breath heavy and ragged, like it was panting with excitement. I didn't know how something so thin, so unnatural could move so fast, but it was gaining on me. Then, just when I thought my legs were about to give out, I saw it. The gas station, the bright fluorescent light spilling out into the parking lot, the big neon sign flashing open in red and blue. I sprinted toward the gas station, ignoring the burning in my chest, ignoring the sound of the thing crashing through the corn behind me. I reached the edge of the parking lot and threw myself through the doors, collapsing onto the floor in a heap. The guy working the counter, a kid named Jake who went to my high school, rushed over to me. "Sarah? What the hell happened to you?" I couldn't speak. I was gasping for air, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. I just pointed back toward the road, back toward the cornfields. Jake looked out the door, then back at me, confused. "There's nothing out there. What are you talking about?" I couldn't explain it. How could I? I had just been chased by something that shouldn't exist, something that came out of the cornfields. I didn't know what to say, so I just shook my head and asked if I could use the phone. Jake nodded and handed me the cordless phone from behind the counter. I called my dad, and when he answered, I could barely get the words out. "Dad, my car broke down. Can you come get me?" He didn't ask questions, just said he'd be there in 10 minutes. While I waited, I sat on the floor of the gas station, staring out the big glass windows. I kept expecting to see that thing standing at the edge of the parking lot, waiting for me. But it never came. The road was empty, and the cornfields were still. My dad showed up a few minutes later in his old pickup. I didn't say much to him on the way home, just told him my car had broken down and I got scared walking alone. I didn't mention the thing in the cornfields. He wouldn't have believed me anyway. When we got home, I went straight to my room and locked the door. I didn't sleep that night, or the next night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing's face, those big, dark eyes staring at me from the shadows. I never took that route home again. Over the years, I tried to forget, tried to push it out of my mind like a bad dream, but the memory never really went away. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet and the wind is rustling through the trees, I'll feel it again. That same sense that something's out there, just beyond the light, waiting, watching. I don't know what it was I saw that night, and I'll probably never know. But one thing's for sure, I'll never forget it. And I'll never be alone in the dark again without wondering if it's still out there, waiting for me to come back.